live. Happy Monday. Welcome to a new week of the Liz Wheeler Show. We're live on X. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Rumble. We're live on Facebook. If you can see me, if you can hear me, let me know in the comment section. We have a good show planned for you today. Two business announcements before we get started with the real meat of the episode today. The first announcement is Nicole Shanahan, RFK Jr.'s running mate from his presidential campaign, is joining Blaze TV. She's bringing her Back to the People podcast and joining us right here. We're so excited. By the way, I have never been so happy to be wrong about someone. When RFK Jr. originally announced Nicole Shanahan as his running mate, my background research on her showed her to be quite to the left of where a lot of us on this show stand politically. And I wrote an article, I penned a piece and published it saying, listen, you shouldn't vote for RFK because Nicole's too far on the left. And I've never been so happy to be wrong. I had not heard her personal story about her own child and her child's descent into autism after being vaccinated. And Nicole has recently become Christian, and I think the colloquial definition of what's happened, a lot of us can relate to this, is Nicole has red pilled a lot, and it's been an absolute joy to watch her journey. And we're so excited to have her here at Blaze TV with us. So make sure you subscribe to her Back to the People podcast, and hopefully we'll be talking to her on the show here pretty soon. But I'm super excited to have her part of the Blaze TV family. That's the first business announcement. The second business announcement is Tim, our beloved and based producer, is no longer with the Liz Wheeler Show. I'm super mad at President Trump about this because Trump poached Tim. Tim left the Liz Wheeler Show to go work for the Trump administration. He is now in a very powerful position at the Department of Homeland Security. And listen, I am going to be bitter about this for a long time, but I'm really happy for Tim. I knew he was smart when I hired him. That's actually why I hired him, because he was so smart, but I had no idea exactly how smart Tim not was, it sounds how smart Tim is. And it's really been a privilege to have worked with him for the past year. He's also a gentleman and a professional, which is a combination that's pretty hard to find in this day and age, especially in media and politics. So it's been a real privilege to collaborate with Tim on this show for the past year, and I know he's going to be doing really good work over at DHS. He's like, let me explain this in the way that I think about it. Tim is like Stephen Miller level smart, like the person that you want behind the scenes running things, like always with the based views, very strategic, very sharp, a very good communicator. So our country's really lucky to have him over at DHS, even though I'm still, like I said, a little bitter not to have him anymore. But I'm also thrilled to announce a new producer. Spencer is joining us now, and Spencer's been a friend of mine for a long time. This is a personal friend and a professional friend. And I'm thrilled to, it's so exciting for us to get to work together. You might know Spencer because if you recall, over the past couple of years, I have talked about the Project Veritas journalists who, after they investigated Ashley Biden's diary, they were raided by the FBI, like pre-dawn raids, like banging on doors. They had their phones and electronics confiscated by the FBI. They actually just got them back a couple weeks ago after Kash Patel took the helm over at the FBI. Well, Spencer is one of those journalists. So that speaks to his credentials in a public sort of way, but really thrilled to be able to welcome Spencer to the show. I hope you all join me in welcoming Spencer, a really conscientious, smart, and thorough journalist. So very excited to be working with him. So those are sort of the logistical business aspects or business announcements today. But what are we doing here today? What are we talking about? Well, the first thing that I want to show you is a video. This is a video that is going to harken back to something we talked about before President Trump won the election last November. This is Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, a Democrat. He was speaking to a group of Democrats, and he's calling for violence in the streets. He is telling the Democrat Party, or mobilizing the Democrat apparatus, to create disruption, he says. He says he's never called for this before, but he is advocating for the Democrat electorate, I suppose. Probably the paid. It's never grassroots. What did we say a couple weeks ago? None of it's real. It's never real. It's never grassroots. It's never organic. It's never just a bunch of people who are trying to express their opinions. It's always a paid op by Democrat mega donors. J.B. Pritzker is calling for that apparatus to make a situation where, quote, Republicans cannot have peace. Take a listen to this.
Never before in my life have I called for mass protests, for mobilization, for disruption, but I am now. These Republicans cannot know a moment of peace. They have to understand that we will fight their cruelty with every megaphone and microphone that we have. We must castigate them on the soapbox and then punish them at the ballot box.
I have never before, he says, called for mass protests, for disruption, but I am now, he says. Republicans cannot have any peace. Hear these words against the backdrop of what we as Republicans have experienced over the past, it's almost 10 years now. Not one, but 2 assassination attempts against President Trump. The 2020 Summer of Rage Black Lives Matter riots,
the White House
where
Correspondents
our businesses in our cities were torched because of lies that the media told, where Republicans have been assaulted and targets of lawfare. And J.B. Pritzker is calling for this again. Listen, before the election, this was a week or so before the election, I warned that we were going to see not only a repeat of the Black Lives Matter riots of 2020. I said, if you listen to the people planning these events, this was a socialist group, for example, who was talking about planning riots in the street, these Antifa-style, Black Lives Matter-style riots in the street. And they said on their planning call, we played the video at the time, they said, not only are we going to repeat these type of riots, it's going to be even bigger. It's going to be even more destructive. And I warned before the election that these riots are going to happen again. The Democrats have to engage in violence in order to impose their agenda on us because their agenda has been exposed. We now know what they want. We see MSNBC this morning after the White House began the day by putting yard signs with mugshots of the criminal illegal aliens that the Trump administration has deported. They put yard signs with the faces, the mugshots of these criminal aliens and the crime they committed all over the White House, which means that every mainstream media outlet broadcasting from the White House had these signs of these criminal deported illegal aliens in the background. MSNBC blurred out the faces of these criminal aliens as if it was somehow a violation of their privacy, as if they were protecting the dignity of these criminal aliens, one of whom sexually assaulted a child. And I said the Democrats are going to engage in riots again because they cannot sell their agenda to the American people and they've run out of time. We are no longer, as Republicans, we are no longer naive to what the Democrat agenda is. We no longer think, oh, well, maybe we'll be able to compromise and find some happy medium, some middle ground. Maybe we'll be able, if we just leave the left alone, they'll leave us alone. We are not that naive anymore like we were for years. We now understand that the left are, a gentle term to describe the left would be cultural Marxists. They are communists. They are anti-American. And they have to take to the streets because it's the only way that they can topple our institutions, our civil institutions. It's the only way that they can enact their communist agenda in our government. And I said it's going to happen again. We're going to see riots in the street. Now, we didn't in the immediate aftermath of the election. And the reason why it was delayed is because Kamala Harris drained the DNC war chest. And the DNC and Act Blue and these Democrat mega donors, they're the ones that pay for all of these Black Lives Matter protesters and Antifa thugs and all of these agitators and the left-wing agitators. This is not grassroots organic. This is not a bunch of people from the community turning out because they're like-minded and they share a viewpoint on a certain cause and they want to make their voices heard. No. These are all paid operatives of the Democrat apparatus. And we didn't see any mass protests after the election because Kamala Harris spent all the money that would have been used to pay for them. Well, fast forward to today, and J.B. Pritzker, this Democrat governor, is calling for these riots to ensue once again, maybe because they've had a little time to increase their bank account. They can now pay for these people. But here's the material point that I'm trying to make here. The reason that this tactic that the left engages in, calling for violence and even engaging in violence, the reason that it works and isn't shut down within an hour of starting is the same reason the assassination attempts against Donald Trump happened. The reason why is because of the mainstream media. Because the media tells lies, the media indoctrinates, the media serves as the propaganda arm of the Democrat Party. Think about back to 2020. Do you think that the American people, regardless of whether people are Republican or Democrat, do you think that people would have allowed the violence that was happening in our cities to continue for 2 seconds, if not for the mainstream media convincing a lot of people who may not have been as politically in tune as they are now, the media convincing these people of 2 lies. The first lie being about the death of George Floyd, that Derek Chauvin, a white man, killed George Floyd because he was a black man. And then expanding that lie into, well, police brutality. Police are a inherently white supremacist force to begin with. The mainstream media convinced America of that lie. And then they simultaneously convinced America that what was happening in our cities, I mean, you and I saw what was happening in Milwaukee thanks to social media, but you turn on CNN and they tell you it's a fiery but mostly peaceful protest as you literally see flames, a building in flames behind the reporter. Do you think if people who weren't as politically engaged as they are now, if people had not been gaslit about George Floyd and police brutality and fiery but mostly peaceful protests, do you think that those protests that weren't really protests, they were riots and looting and arson and assault on cops, destruction of our communities, would they have continued for more than one afternoon had the media not propagated these lies? I contend that the American people would have looked at these things and be like, we are not a violent people. What is going on? Stop those thugs from doing what they're doing. But the media refused to entertain even the possibility that Derek Chauvin, because he was a white man, didn't kill Floyd because he was black. Like, maybe there was another reason. Maybe something else happened. Maybe it wasn't intentional. Maybe George Floyd had toxic, deadly levels of fentanyl in his system. Could that be a possibility? Well, according to the mainstream media, not even a possibility. Couldn't even ask that question, even though it turned out to be true. George Floyd had toxic, deadly levels of fentanyl in his system. He was showing signs of respiratory distress and even his respiratory system shutting down. He couldn't breathe before Derek Chauvin even touched him. But the mainstream media wouldn't even entertain that possibility. So fast forward to today, and we're seeing this same apparatus that allowed 2020 to happen revving its engine once again. The White House Correspondents Dinner happened over the weekend in Washington, D.C. Now, this is always a really pretentious, kind of grotesque event the mainstream media puts on to celebrate themselves. Always a lovely premise for an event, to celebrate yourself. Well, the president wasn't there and there wasn't a comedian there, so it was missing a lot of its star power. If you don't have Donald Trump at your event in Washington, D.C. these days, is your event really even worth having? I would argue no. Well, the White House Correspondents Dinner happened, and even though it was a somewhat of a nothing burger, Alex Thompson of Axios spoke at this dinner, and he talked about the story of Joe Biden's cognitive decline. And he put on this presentation as if he was holding himself and others in the mainstream media and the corporate media and the leftist media accountable for, quote unquote, missing this story. Take a listen to this.
The White House Correspondents Association is as necessary as ever. President Biden's decline and its cover-up by the people around him is a reminder that every White House, regardless of party, is capable of deception. But being truth tellers also means telling the truth about ourselves. We, myself included, missed a lot of this story, and some people trust us less because of it. We bear some responsibility for faith in the media being at such lows. I say this because acknowledging errors builds trust, and being defensive about them further erodes it. We should have done better. I believe our mission.
Oh, we missed this. They bear some responsibility, Alex Thompson says, with absolutely fake humility. Let me tell you why this presentation by Alex Thompson perfectly exemplifies the problem, not just the problem of the mainstream media. We're all aware that they're liars. We're all aware that they're frauds. We're all aware that they're propagandists. But I want to show you why the mainstream media is revving those same engines that they used in 2020 to propagate lies, which enabled violence, and why that's about to start again. I'm going to tell you about that in just a second, but first, I want to tell you about a new partner on this show, Preborn. You know I'm pro-life. A lot of you are pro-life. When I talk on college campuses to young people about the issue of life and about the reality of abortion, a question I often get, especially from young men, is what can I do as a young man? When young men tell me I try to be an advocate, I try to be pro-life, but I'm told by women that I can't have an opinion. No uterus, no opinion, I'm told. And I tell young men, first of all, you're always allowed to speak reality. You're always allowed to stand up for vulnerable. But if you want to put your money where your mouth is, if you want to enact influence, if you want to save babies, then join Preborn. Preborn's network of clinics rescued over 67,000 babies from abortion last year alone, and they need you to do that. Your tax-deductible donation of $28 sponsors one ultrasound. And when a mom sees her unborn child on an ultrasound screen, it doubles the baby's chance at life. So my question to you today is a challenge. How many babies can you save? Please donate your best gift today. Just dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, keyword baby, or go to preborn.com/Liz. That's preborn.com/Liz. And I know this next call to action won't be for everyone. It may not be for you. But as abortion continues to rise, Preborn is expanding their life-affirming care in the darkest corners of our nation to help more hurting women and save more babies. If you have the means, would you consider a leadership gift to save babies in a big way? Your tax-deductible donation of $15,000 will place an ultrasound machine in a needy women's center, saving countless lives for years to come. Pray about it. Think about it. I know it's not for everyone, but if you can, pound 250, keyword baby, or go to preborn.com/Liz. Okay. So Alex Thompson at Axios saying, we missed this. We missed Biden's cognitive decline. I guess they must have had their eyes open as Biden shook hands with the air and babbled to nobody around him and wandered off the stage like the doddering, senile old man that he is. Yeah, you missed this, did ya? Let me tell you what actually happened. Typically, when the mainstream media runs propaganda interference for the Democrat Party, they collude. They are in on it. They know what they're doing. They're part of the cool kids club manipulating the rubes out there like you. But they know better. So they're just serving as the gatekeeper because they know what's best for the country. And if they need to tell a little tiny lie to you in order to achieve their outcome, well, the ends justify the means, don't they? At least morally, to save the democracy. That is how the mainstream media works on an average day. But with the Biden cognitive decline, it was a little bit different. The Biden administration and then Kamala Harris and her campaign hung the mainstream media out to dry. They weren't in on it together. They weren't, we got your back, you got our back, we'll have this nice little cozy club in Washington, D.C. No. When Joe Biden took the stage in that presidential debate against President Trump, and you and I saw with our eyes, and everyone in the country and everyone around the world saw with their eyes, that Joe Biden was, in fact, in serious, severe cognitive decline, suddenly the Biden administration handed the reins to Kamala Harris, or Kamala and Pelosi and Barack took the reins from Joe Biden, might be a more precise way to describe the situation. And the mainstream media was left with egg on their face because suddenly it was the mainstream media who had been assuring us, as Jake Tapper did to Laura Trump, that Joe Biden's cognitive faculties were perfectly intact and it's downright disrespectful to question them. But suddenly the Biden administration, the Kamala campaign essentially admitted that Biden was no longer fit to be president. And the mainstream media, who just the day before had assured us that he was fine, well, were they lying to us? Of course they were lying to us. But usually the politicians for whom the mainstream media lies don't leave them out to dry. And they did leave them out to dry. And the media didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do for a long time. And so now they're trying this fake humility. It's not real humility. This was self-aggrandizing. If I ever saw it, it was grotesque. It was impossible to watch without cringing, because they're not actually sorry for what they did. They're simply sorry that the Democrats stuck it to them, and that the mainstream media are the ones that looked like liars instead of the Biden administration, who was doing the lying all along. All that being said, the mainstream media has not changed their character. They've not changed their tune. And we have examples of this from just this weekend. 2 stories, which the mainstream media told us we were bad people. The first one specifically, the mainstream media told us we were bad people after the helicopter crashed into the jetliner outside of DCA, the Washington, D.C. Reagan Airport. And many of us said, well, why did this happen? Why did this helicopter fly directly into the jetliner, killing 70 people? This doesn't happen on a regular basis. It's not just, human error. Our aviation system is designed to compensate for human error. We don't have plane crashes. What happened? And many of us pointed to the DEI standards that the FAA had ushered in. This was from air traffic control to pilot standards to military standards, because the chopper was a military chopper. And we said, well, DEI lowers the standards, and that's dangerous in aviation. You can't lower the standards, because then human error results in 70 plus people being killed in a plane crash. And we were told at the time, we were gaslit like heck. We were told that is so offensive. Just because the pilot's a woman doesn't mean that she's less. I have there's a prominent leftist. You know who this is. It's a prominent leftist who is in a public facing position, who texted me and called me that day that crash happened, when I suggested that it was DEI, and was like, how can you suggest this? Isn't that the same as someone suggesting that you got your job and you're hosting your show based on DEI? And I was like, it's not the same at all. It's, in fact, totally different, because when air traffic control and the FAA and the military reduce standards in the name of diversity, meaning they cared more about immutable characteristics in their employee pool than they did about the skill level of the employees. Well, when you prioritize that, it doesn't just mean that you look at a person and say, oh, she's a woman. That must mean that she was a DEI hire. She's lesser. Or that's a black person. It must mean that he's a DEI hire and he's lesser skill-wise. No. You could have a white man who was hired, but the standards were lowered due to DEI wanting to include more people. And so the white man might have a lower level skill and might have caused something bad to happen. This is hypothetical, of course, based on DEI. So it's not at all about looking at the individual. It's about the holistic effect that DEI has, lowering collectively the skill level and the standards. In this case, the skill level and the standards translate exactly to safety. So we were gaslit, by the way, when we pointed this out. Horribly, horribly gaslit. Well, it turns out we were right. Would you look at that? We were right. The New York Times even admitted it this weekend. You can look at this report from the New York Times. It says 2 seconds after the controllers cut out instruction about passing behind the jet, Warrant Officer Eves replied, affirming for the second time that the Blackhawks saw the traffic. Pat 25 has the aircraft in sight. Request visual separation, he said. VizSep approved, the controller replied. It was their last communication. The Blackhawk was 15 seconds away from crossing paths with the jet. Warrant Officer Eves, that's the man who was the training instructor for this flight, then turned his attention to Captain Lobach. Captain Lobach is the woman that you see on the screen. She was flying the plane under the instruction of Warrant Officer Eves. Warrant Officer Eves, told her he believed that air traffic control wanted them to turn left toward the East River bank. Turning left would have opened up more space between the helicopter and Flight 5342, which was heading for runway 33 at an altitude of roughly 300 feet. She did not turn left. It's painful to relive this because people's lives were lost as a result of this. But the point of the point of this is not to pat ourselves on the back. It's not to say, oh, we were right, it was DEI. The point of this is the mainstream media is still doing what they did in the summer of 2020. They are propagating a lie to you on a mass scale. For what purpose? Well, we'll get to what purpose in a minute. By the way, it's not just narratives that they're propagating. They're still trying to vilify Trump as an individual. President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump went to Pope Francis's funeral in Rome at the Vatican over the weekend, and President Trump wore a blue suit. The mainstream media went ballistic about this. They said it's disrespectful. You're supposed to wear a black suit, or you're supposed to wear black, as in the color of mourning, at the funeral of a pope. And President Trump is so disrespectful, so egotistical, such a narcissist, he couldn't even be bothered to put on a black suit. And they made it seem like it was some personal insult that Trump intentionally was levying against the now deceased pope. What they failed to mention, of course, as they are trying to vilify Trump, is that Prince William wore a blue suit. You can check this out on the screen too. Oh, Prince William, the heir to the throne in the United Kingdom, wore a blue suit. Was he trying to intentionally insult the Pope? Well, there were no headlines suggesting this. And then, of course, the very photograph that the mainstream media used to try to prove their point that President Trump was the only one wearing a blue suit. Actually, if you zoom out just a little bit, they strategically cropped that photo to about this big. If you zoom out just a little bit on that photo, what do you see? You see a whole bunch of dignitaries and world leaders wearing blue suits. Oh, okay. So the photo on the left, yeah, it looks like Trump's the only one in the blue suit. And there's a total of 8 people in the photo. Well, you zoom out a little bit. So there's about 25 people in the photo, and about half of them, a third to a half, are in blue suits, which destroys the mainstream media's narrative. And you have to ask, so why would they tell a lie about something so seemingly insignificant and stupid? Like the color of a suit? Who cares? Well, the reason why is because they are setting up the same scenario. They are making sure that they still have psychological hold of their viewers. And it's when I saw this weekend, I first of all thought, wow, how stupid. Like, literally, who even notices what color suit someone else is wearing? I don't even see that when I'm looking at a photo. Like, is that what you think about? Just ways that you can possibly pick on President Trump? Like, what a sad, sorry life these people have if that's what they're dedicated to doing. But truthfully, because President Trump bypassed the mainstream media when he won in November, he completely circumvented them. He not only didn't need them, he didn't use them, he debunked them, he defeated them. We have to be sure, those of us on the right, that we are not completely dismissing the mainstream media. And what I mean by that is we have to make sure that we don't underestimate the power that the mainstream media still has to manipulate people who may not be as politically in focus as you are. Because the mainstream media has the power to divide people. They have the power to propagate fake news. They have the power to lie. They are very skilled at all of these things. Again, harken back to 2020. Would those riots have even happened if they had not lied about George Floyd's cause of death, refused to question whether there might be another explanation besides Derek Chauvin just being such a racist that he would murder a black man because he's black? If they had actually showed the damage that was being wrought by these rioters, do you think that the summer of rage would have happened? Again, I would argue no. So then you fast forward to summer of 2024, 2 assassination attempts against President Trump. Why did that happen? Well, it happened because the mainstream media, more even than leftist politicians, the mainstream media had told us over and over for 8 years that Trump is Hitler. Trump's an authoritarian. Trump's a dictator. Trump's going to genocide marginalized people. Trump's a threat to our very democracy. What are you going to do? Well, what do you think people are going to do? They're going to feel so desperate if they believe your propaganda that it's going to lead them to try to kill the president of the United States. And the mainstream media wasn't defeated in November. They suffered a loss because President Trump won despite their best efforts, but they are not defeated. They are revving their engines to start again, to start running cover for Democrats, to start manipulating the American people, to at least attempt a psychological grip on the minds of Americans so that when Democrats do what Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker called for, mass protests, disruption, take to the streets, Republicans cannot have a moment of peace. When that begins to happen, the riots that I predicted the Democrats have to engage in if they want to actually impose their agenda on us, when that begins to happen, the mainstream media is prepared. They have started their engines. It's an existential battle. An existential battle. Okay, we have some headlines, including one of Epstein's chief accusers suddenly and unexpectedly commits suicide. Is something fishy going on there? We also have Bill Belichick sat down for a really weird, really uncomfortable interview with his girlfriend. He's like 74, 73. She's 24. She kept interrupting the interview. What's going on there? We also have updates on the papal conclave, which is the cardinals in the Catholic Church all gathering at the in Rome at the Vatican to elect a new pope. We have updates on that in just a moment. But first, there are 3 institutions in our country which I categorize as the most corrupt of all. Those 3 are big education, the administrative state in our federal government, that's the deep state or the swamp, and big pharma. And they spend a lot of time, these institutions, conspiring to manipulate us and limit our freedoms. So I spend a lot of time strategizing how to maximize my freedom and how to circumvent them. And here's how I do it. I specifically, when it comes to medical freedom, which is my ability to make healthcare decisions for myself and my family, unencumbered by the Faucis of the world and the big pharma profit motivations of the world. Um, when it comes to medical freedom, I am proud to partner with All Family Pharmacy because All Family Pharmacy believes in your right to choose your own healthcare without restrictions from big pharma or big government. This is how it works essentially. It's very easy. They work with doctors to provide the prescriptions to you. So there's no waiting room, no pharmacy line. You order online and then your medications are shipped straight to your door. And when I say medications, I'm talking over 200 medications available: ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, antibiotics, medbendazole, everything you need. And when I say shipping, I mean quick shipping, 2 to 4 business days, or you can even opt for overnight. All Family Pharmacy is a family owned business, a private pharmacy that believes in your right to medical freedom. That's why they've been trusted by over 100,000 Americans. If you use my code Liz10, you can get 10% off your order. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz. Check them out. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz, code Liz10 at checkout. All right. We also have a video of Joe Biden at Pope Francis's funeral, which kind of you'll see in a minute when I show it to you, but it brings the show in full circle because it shows exactly how severe the mainstream media cover up of Biden's cognitive decline is, because there is no other word, and I mean this with all due respect, honestly, there is no other word to describe him than doddering and senile. And he may be on his way out of public life in the US, but the impact of his destructive policies, it's still hurting you. It's still hurting me. Especially when it comes to our finances. The US dollar is facing unprecedented inflation thanks to Joe Biden's reckless spending, which is scary. As if it's not scary enough, globalist politicians, controlling politicians even here domestically, are trying to control you using your money. That's their whole digital dollar thing. It's a Chinese Communist Party style social credit score system. Listen, it has never been more important than for you to take control over your wealth. Don't let your life savings become a casualty of failing banks or currency wars. Now is the time to call the only precious metal dealer I trust, American Hartford Gold. They'll show you how to protect your savings and your retirement accounts by diversifying your wealth portfolio with physical gold and silver. My husband and I did this. Part of our wealth portfolio is now in physical precious metals, and it gives us tremendous confidence that politicians can't use that money to control us. Check them out. Tell American Hartford Gold that I sent you. They'll give you up to $15,000 of free silver on your first order. Call them now. You can click the link in the description of this episode or call 866-996-5172. That's 866-996-5172, or text my name, Liz, to 998899. Again, the phone number is 866-996-5172, or text Liz to 998899. Okay, there's some great comments that I've seen rolling in the live chat. Keep them coming. We'll try to get to some of the comments at the end after we do a few of these headlines. The first headline is one of Jeffrey Epstein's chief accusers, Virginia Giuffre, died of suicide over the weekend. Her family announced this. This comes just a couple of days after Virginia Giuffre herself had posted a picture. I believe we have this picture, Spencer. Yep, there it is on the screen. She had been in a car accident, hit by a bus. You have to ask yourself, what are the chances of that? Not only what are the chances of that, but what are the chances of that happening to an accuser of Jeffrey Epstein? If you're a believer in coincidences, maybe you view that as a coincidence. If you are not a believer in coincidences, that one will make you scratch your head, especially given the fact that back in 2019, Virginia Giuffre had posted on social media that I am not suicidal. We also have this. She said, this was on December 10th of 2019. She said, I am making it publicly known. Can you bring that back up on the screen so I can read it? I'm making it publicly known that in no way, shape, or form am I suicidal. That was not too many years ago. I have made this known to my therapist and GP, general practitioner. If something happens to me, in the sake of my family, do not let this go away and help me to protect them. Too many evil people want to see me quieted. That was 2019. That was what, 5, 6 years ago? In 2023, she made another post. This was November 12th of 2023. She said, I'm sorry to tell you that I have given the authorities in 6 different countries all the names. I have even and still am fighting for my depositions to be released so that they can be held accountable. I'm just one person. I can't take on the 1%ers by myself. I do want to live a lengthy life. When you juxtapose those posts with what are the chances of anybody being hit by a bus, particularly one of Jeffrey Epstein's chief accusers, you do wonder if there is a more serious investigation that is warranted here. I certainly would suggest that an investigation that goes beyond simply local law enforcement, I would suggest that such an investigation is certainly warranted. You're going to have a hard time convincing people to investigate Jeffrey Epstein further because he's no longer alive. Who investigates a dead man? You'll get as a response, and that's understandable. And yet, the American people have outstanding questions, not only about Jeffrey Epstein because what's known about Jeffrey Epstein is so despicable. His actions were so despicable. It's the worst crime that can be committed in our culture, and rightly so, is sexual abuse against a child. And because Jeffrey Epstein did that and simultaneously rubbed elbows with powerful, rich people and politicians, and there's then allegations that those politicians helped cover up Jeffrey Epstein's crimes, it seems that the investigation would be warranted, even if Jeffrey Epstein is no longer alive, having allegedly committed suicide while in a maximum security prison, the highest security prison in the United States. I don't know what kind of spring child would believe that he committed suicide. Now, I will say there are some questions about Virginia Giuffre's credibility. Her reputation has been questioned by people who have credibility themselves, like Alan Dershowitz. Virginia Giuffre had made allegations that Alan Dershowitz was somehow associated with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, it's true that Alan Dershowitz was Jeffrey Epstein's attorney, I believe, but Alan Dershowitz said Jeffrey Epstein hid the part of his life where he abused young girls and he had no idea about that, let alone any involvement in it. I think Alan Dershowitz actually wrote a whole book about it, talking about being crucified by allegation, kind of like the pre-Me Too movements, a takedown of the Me Too movement prior to the Me Too movement. So there are some questions about the credibility of Virginia Giuffre that remain. I think what it brings to a lot of our minds, though, is the Epstein files. The Epstein files, my favorite topic, as you guys know. The Epstein files, what are we going to find out when Attorney General Pam Bondi finally releases those Epstein files? The ones that the SDNY hid from her, that she only found out about when a whistleblower told her that those infamous binders, the binders, when those infamous binders weren't actually the extent of all the Epstein files, but that there were other files that the FBI did not want her to release and was hiding from her. Well, that turned out to be true. There are other Epstein files, but what's going to be in them? And I got to tell you, I have grown painfully cynical about what we are going to find in the Epstein files in the wake of the JFK file release, which I accurately predicted would contain essentially nothing. I said, why would we expect corrupt actors in our federal government to write a whodunit? Why would we think that the CIA is going to be like, yeah, we did it. This is exactly line for line how we killed JFK. And I said before, this was the afternoon that the JFK files were released, and we went live before they were released. And people said, well, what do you think is going to happen? I said, nothing. Nothing's going to happen. And it's not going to change our viewpoint on JFK. Many of us are very suspicious about what happened to JFK and feel that the CIA probably was involved in some way, shape, or form, that Russia could have been involved in some way, shape, or form. It's not going to change people's belief because there are so many holes in the quote unquote official narrative of what happened to JFK. And sure enough, the JFK files were a nothing burger because the CIA and the FBI don't write whodunits and then allow those whodunits, like a murder mystery that neatly ties the bow on this is how you solve it. This is how it was done. This is who's the culprit. It was an unrealistic expectation, anybody who thought that that was going to be the case. I fear we are going to have the same experience with the Epstein files. Do you think it's realistic to think that even if there are high-ranking politicians in our country, either current politicians or past politicians, who were somehow involved with or in the know about Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking, sex abuse, do you think that they're going to preserve that? That these deep state actors who want the intelligence agencies to have more power are going to expose the intelligence agencies in a way that would cause the American people to want their power reduced? I predict that we will get about the same amount of information in the Epstein files. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we get names and videos and photos, but do we really think we will? You don't think that they've been hidden or destroyed? Do you really think the FBI is that competent? That they just have this like entire bulletproof, no pun intended, case against Epstein and it just like sat on a file somewhere, sat on a shelf somewhere for years? I got to tell you, I've grown increasingly cynical. I don't think it's going to happen. I do, however, think an investigation into what happened to Virginia Giuffre is warranted. And as I said, an investigation at a higher level than an investigation conducted just by local law enforcement. That is my take. A YouTube comment from Clementine says, or it was all staged and she's in witness protection. Oh, well, that's conspiracy at a whole different level. Is she actually? Maybe she's with Elvis somewhere. I don't know. I am cynical, but I'm open to all possibilities. A lot, it could be the simplest explanation is true too. A lot she posted in 2019 that she wasn't suicidal. Well, maybe she wasn't then. Maybe she is now. A lot can change in 6 years. I don't know. I think it warrants investigation though. And I hope that there is some investigation into it. Okay, did you guys watch the Bill Belichick interview on CBS Sunday morning? Or did you at least see the painful, cringy clip of Bill Belichick, former Patriots coach? Y'all know him, the guy with the holes in his sweatshirt, kind of a curmudgeon. He was being interviewed and he seemed almost like a caricature of himself. He didn't seem like the Bill Belichick that so many people knew and loved when he was like Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, Robert Kraft winning Super Bowls. This seemed like a very different person. And the reason why he seemed like a caricature of himself is he didn't seem to be thinking for himself. He seemed to be under, we can say under the direction of, but maybe a more accurate way of saying it would be he seemed to be under the control of this young woman who he has been dating. 24-year-old Jordan Husband interrupted the interview to tell him he wasn't allowed to answer a certain question. Take a look at this.
Jordan was a constant presence during our interview.
You have Jordan right over there. Everybody in the world seems to be following this relationship. They've got an opinion about your private life. It's got nothing to do with them, but they're invested in it. How do you deal with that?
Never been too worried about what everybody else thinks. Just try to do what I feel like is best for me and what's right.
How did you guys meet?
Not talking about this.
No?
No.
It's a topic neither one of them is comfortable commenting on.
Neither one of them, or something that Jordan Hudson dictated that Bill Belichick wasn't allowed to comment on? Because if both of them felt that way, it doesn't seem like Jordan Hudson would have needed to interrupt the interview to boss Bill Belichick around. Listen, the story of how they met has previously been reported, which kind of makes this interview even weirder. The International Business Times, and this is from just last month, wrote an article about how they met. This is what This is the report. In February 2021, Belichick was traveling from the Boston area to Florida, seated next to Hudson, then a college student and cheerleader. Keep in mind, Belichick's like 73 or 74 now. Sources say during that trip, Belichick leaned in to ask about Hudson's schoolwork, specifically her deductive logic textbook. Their conversation quickly became engaging, with the pair diving into discussions about logic and reasoning. Belichick was reportedly so impressed that he signed the inside cover of her textbook, inscribing, "Thanks for giving me a course on logic," along with his signature. This gesture, captured in a photo later obtained by TMZ, marked the beginning of a connection that would quietly grow over the following years. First of all, a photo is not just later obtained by Bill Belichick. If it's in her textbook, it was given to TMZ by Jordan Hudson. Why? Because she somehow, and for some reason, wanted their relationship to be public. So, kind of weird that this was previously reported how they met, at least this version of the story, and that now Jordan Hudson didn't. But here's the thing. If you got Jada Pinkett Smith vibes from Jordan Hudson and Will Smith vibes from Bill Belichick, well, you're not the only one who got that kind of vibes. There was a user on X, and I lost track of this post. So if you let me know who you are, I'll give you credit for it. But I've forgotten who made this post. Some user on X this morning identified Jordan Hudson's face and her first name belonging to the account of another woman who, as I said, shares her first name and shares her face, but has a different last name, and suggested that this identical Jordan with a different last name was a high-end escort. Oh, high-end escort. Well, maybe that would explain not only the reticence to talk about how they met, but also this weird, toxic, really disordered dynamic between Jordan Hudson and Bill Belichick. Like what normal 73 or 74-year-old dates a 24-year-old? And what normal 24-year-old dates a 73 or 74-year-old? They don't. That's not a normal thing to do. There's something disordered in this. We also know Bill Belichick was very close friends with Robert Kraft. We know about Robert Kraft's history, his scandal with the prostitutes. Something doesn't quite add up here. It's also pretty stereotypical, actually. A very stereotypical dynamic when I'm not saying she's a prostitute. That was an allegation someone on X made. I don't know if it's true or not. But it is a stereotypical dynamic if a prostitute ends up entering into a relationship with one of her previous clients for that relationship to be controlled by the prostitute, for that prostitute to be manipulative and controlling, and sometimes just have this very weird psychological hold over the older man that she is now controlling. And let's just say, I have no idea if this is true or not. It was an allegation made on X, but all of the elements that would exist if that allegation were true seem to be true in this case. Very strange vibe. I feel sympathy for his family having to watch this kind of spectacle unfold. Okay, I want to talk to you about Kexi cookies. Oh, you know what? There's usually talking points and stuff that we read about advertisers, but I got to tell you, I gave a box of Kexi cookies to my brother-in-law for Easter. My sister and my brother-in-law came over and for Easter baskets to give Easter baskets to my kids, and I gave my brother-in-law a box of Kexi cookies. And this is what he texted me once he finally tasted them. He goes, "I've been alive for 42 years. I've been enthusiastically eating cookies for 40 of those years. The white chocolate strawberry cookie is among the best cookies I have ever eaten, easily in the top 3." And then, like, 2 minutes later, I picture him probably, like, eating a cookie in the interim. He texts me again and goes, "Dare I say, ... it could be the best cookie of all time." Listen, you can believe him or you can try it for yourself. Go to Kexi.com. Use code Liz15. Is your mouth watering? Kexi.com. Use code Liz15 for a 15% discount. Okay, updates on the Papal Conclave. That, of course, is the event in which cardinals, who are officials of the Catholic Church, gather in Rome at the Vatican to elect a new pope. The Papal Conclave typically happens around 2 weeks after the death of the previous pope. Pope Francis, of course, died a week ago. The Papal Conclave has been announced that it will convene on May 7th. So almost exactly in line with what we predicted. About 2 weeks after the death of Pope Francis, the papal conclave will convene. And from then, it can take anywhere from a matter of hours to a matter of years for the election of the Pope. I say that laughing because it did once take years for a papal conclave to agree on who the next Pope was going to be, but that doesn't really happen in modern times. In modern times, it usually takes 2 or 3 days. So we should know, an educated guess, by probably May 10th, give or take, who the new Pope will be. President Trump attended over the weekend, though, and First Lady Melania Trump attended the funeral of Pope Francis in Rome. It was kind of a meeting of all world leaders. There were a lot of dignitaries and presidents and just leaders of the world all gathering in St. Peter's Basilica, and Zelenskyy was there, president of Ukraine. And I don't know how President Trump does this. I do not know how one man can have so many iconic photographs. He met for a 15-minute peace talk with Zelenskyy. And look at this. Look at this photograph. How does he do this? Like, it's the garbage truck. It's the McDonald's photo. It's the fight photo. It's shaking hands with RFK. It's next to Elon Musk leaping in the air. How does he do this? How does he do this? I have no idea how he does this. But another iconic photo of President Trump means that the memes abound on this photo, and these memes do not disappoint. I offer you 2 of my favorites. You can vote in the comments and tell me which one is wins here, but I've narrowed it down to 2. The first one being from John Harold, who says, quote, "For your penance, you must do 3 Hail Marys, stop cross-dressing, and quit asking us for money." I sent this one to everyone I know because I was chortling with laughter when I read that. Kudos to John for that one. Okay, so that's number 1. You can either vote for option number 1 or option number 2 is so savage. I almost couldn't include it in the show, but it just cracked me up. Mostly peaceful memes posted, quote, "Make the deal or I'll have JD come visit you too." So savage. It's like almost inappropriate savage, but if that doesn't kick you in the gut, I don't know what does. All right, which one? Which one? Option number 1 or option number 2? Trump the priest or Trump threatening JD on Zelenskyy? You guys can pick, because I couldn't decide. I was going to show you my favorite one and I couldn't decide. All right, to bring the show in full circle, and I'm going to read, by the way, once you guys vote, I'm going to read which one has the most votes here. Joe Biden also attended Pope Francis's funeral with former First Lady Jill Biden. But watch this and see what you notice about this video. See what you notice when Biden is entering the funeral area. He is escorted by a cardinal. We can roll this tape, Spencer. He's escorted by a cardinal, and look at this man. Look at this man who just months ago, 100 days ago, was the president of the United States. Let's roll that. Look at that. Joe Biden grips the arm of this cardinal, escorting him as if he is a blind man, as if he needs assistance just to walk. That is not the behavior of a man who is in full control of his mental faculties. This is a doddering, senile man who has been a doddering, senile man for years. And he lied to us. And Jill Biden lied to us. His entire administration lied to us. Kamala Harris lied to us. And most egregiously of all, the mainstream media lied and lied and lied to us. Again, it brings it in full circle. Because Alex Thompson over at Axios, don't you tell me that, oh, we missed this. What are you, stupid? Do you not have eyes? You did not miss this. You ran propaganda to gaslight people who could see this happening with our own eyes. And the reason that you did that is because you believe you are better than us. You believe that you are so much better than us that you should tell us what's appropriate for us to know. You should teach us and control how we think. Because after all, your political agenda in office, that's all that really matters. The ends justify the means. So if you have to lie to us stupid little rubes and fly over America, well, it's worth it, isn't it? They're revving their engines again. They're starting the process over. The mainstream media suffered a loss in November when Trump completely circumvented them and still won the election, but they are not defeated. They are gearing up to run the same propaganda efforts that stoked the flames of hatred and divide in our country to the point where not only were our cities burning at the hands of paid Democrat agitators, but that Donald Trump, the president of the United States, suffered 2 assassination attempts. They're doing it again. I said they would, and they are. All right, let's look at the votes to see. I'm going to tally up these votes here. Before I tally up the votes, I do want to mention something that the media, of course, would rather you ignore. You have heard the media's version of January 6th. Now it's time to see what they have actually been hiding the entire time. The final episode of Blaze TV's in-depth investigation dropped last week. It blows the narrative wide open. We've got Capitol surveillance footage, conflicting timelines, and serious questions about Officer Harry Dunn's story. It's streaming right now exclusively on Blaze TV. Subscribe today at blazetv.com/J6. All right, we have a winner. It looks like number 2 wins. Oh, that's why I love you guys, because you're savage. You are unafraid to say, yeah, if you don't cut it out, if you don't sign our minerals deal, we're gonna send JD to meet with you. It's so savage. But you voted too. I voted too. And 2, the second meme is the winner. We'll have to let political memes know that his meme won the day. All right, guys, make sure that you are subscribed. If you're subscribed, if you're watching on YouTube, great. If you're not, go to youtube.com/Liz Wheeler. If you're watching on X, great. But make sure, if you're not watching on X, that you are following x.com/Liz_Wheeler. We also have video on Spotify, which is great. It's been wonderful to see all of you go over there and subscribe. It really helps grow the show. So even if you prefer watching on a different platform, please go hit that subscribe button to support the show and our collective effort, yours and mine, our combined effort, I should say, our collaborative effort to take on the mainstream media and stand up for a based worldview meaning based in reality, which is, of course, the theme of the show. All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show.